Hello, welcome everyone to this episode of the Smarter Business Podcast. This is a business podcast with a video bent. We like to talk to business people who are using video in interesting ways and, get a little advice out of them. Today, we are talking to John Osberg of OZmosis Consulting. John, it's great to have you.
It's great to be with you, my brother, and big shout out to Vidwheel Creator Network and vidwheel and to you and team. I sincerely can't thank you enough, and I know that's been that drum has been beat about the digital world and the whatever other worlds. So it's really cool to be with you, my friend.
Excellent. Yeah. Well, I appreciate all the shout outs you give us every time I see you. It's created with the help of the Vidwheel Creator Network, which is great.
The kid,
So,
your support.
yeah, well, let's talk a little bit about kind of how that all came together, right? Like you have been on the podcast before, right? Episode 11 was you alone, and then you actually were a co-host with us for a while pre-COVID, right? When we were in studio, I think you talked to Raj Suchek, you talked to Pat Whalen, you talked to the Bills Mafia guys. Yeah.
Dan and Maddie.
Yeah. And so you had some great episodes there. And
Gavigan.
And Gavigan. Yeah, John Gavigan, right.
Yes,
and now, you're a guest again in a different world, right? So let's talk a little bit about what your path has been through the pandemic and what you're up to today.
Yeah, man. Thank you, Neil. Yeah, big shout out to John Gavigan, Raj Suchek, the Bills Mafia crew, Del Reed, and Dan Gigante, Matt Carlucci, and then of course Pat Whalen too. And hey, I've got my dig mug from the dig days in Buffalo Niagara Medical Campus there. But I want to rewind even further, Neil, which would be to December 2019. I remember, how much I'd been getting into podcasting and how obsessed I was with podcasting, how much it actually helped attribute to kind of what osmosis really became at a truly visceral, growth oriented level, like really like personal development is what I meant to say there. And I remember reaching out to you, and I've known you, Neil, for a long time, my friend, and you've been just that, a friend, a mentor, a source of inspiration for me about what Give First really means. And not just saying it, but truly, immersing in Give First, which is to give because it's inherently good, and to give without expectation of anything back, and reciprocity. So I remember reaching out to you, Neil, very accessible. You were happy to talk with me. I was noodling around the ideas of podcasting, what that looked like. And I'll never forget, man. You're like, well, I've got the setup, I've got the studio, I've got the know-how. Like, and this is pre-pandemic, obviously, because it was December 2019. So I just remember your willingness to share insights and afford the opportunity to work with me, which then, of course, starts with our first podcast, which I'll never forget it being in studio, man. And it was one that when you said, okay, we're rolling, it went from like happy go lucky, joking, no nerves, to all of a sudden, oh no, the camera's on, and I remember being nervous and screwing it up a couple of times. Right. But of course you were great you were understanding, and, within a couple iterations or tries, we were rocking and rolling, and you kindly featured me. And then, from there, it was like, yeah, I think we have something here. I'd love to be able to not only bring in some great, people, but also then obviously host them again, which you were, really cool and kind to allow that. So it goes back even further than just, and I'm not saying you weren't saying that, but I wanted to make sure I colored that narrative because it was really something, man. And honestly, I'll make a bold statement right here in the first few minutes. Osmosis Consulting would not be 7 months old without the help of the Vidwheel Creator Network. I would not be turning 7 months old as a business without the support of you, Neil, and then of course Morgan and some of the other team and supporters that you have in your network, but also your team. So I would literally not be here without you, and I'm not saying that to be artificial. I say that with all the candor and authenticity in the world. So the content that I'm shooting, the people that I'm talking to, the business that is coming out of the podcast and the content that I'm putting out there are literally creating business. They're creating opportunity. They're creating interest in the people that I'm working with, the companies I'm working with, the community organizations I'm working with. So the power of video, and this is where I'll finish, but the power of, at least with this particular topic, the power of video truly is immeasurable, and there's a few reasons why that maybe we unpack. But I will be also candid and say that I knew video was cool. I know people are kind of lazy and they don't want to really read, so they'd rather watch these videos. Whatever, 6 to 7 minutes is the sweet spot. But I did not know it until I really got involved with the network and started to do my own thing and teach myself how to create content, but also have the ideas for what's going to be resonant, relevant content. So yeah, man, this has been a fun ride. And here we are, April 2021 or whatever it is. I know you'll release this in May, but I'm just so grateful and so energized, if you couldn't tell already.
Yeah, yeah. Well, that's good. We like the enthusiasm, and congratulations on 7 months.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, I appreciate everything you put into the Smarter Business podcast back when we were in studio. And yeah, I think it seemed like a perfect fit when we started talking again mid pandemic about how
Yep.
you could start doing some creation and so on with content creation, and we were just spinning up the creator network. So I think you're a success story, right? Like you're making your
Very
own
kind.
stuff. You've moved uh pretty far down the path in terms of learning how to edit, learning how to shoot things properly, or master with your gear now, right? I see
Yeah.
different setups all the time from you, kind of tweaking our basic setup
Yeah.
to work with your situation. So I think it's excellent.
Appreciate it.
And you know, let's keep rolling, right?
Let's keep hammering, Neil. Let's keep hammering, baby. Let's go, man. I mean, seriously, and I want to acknowledge you too. Just really quickly, I don't want to steal it back, but I want to acknowledge you in that, the absolute, the resilience, the perseverance, the courage to face adversity head on, which was you went from a lot of on-prem shooting and obviously the studio, which by the way I brought back into the fold now with vaccinations and all that. But
Right.
for you to be able to take your business, which was, I don't know the percentage, but I have to think it's greater than majority of your business revenue was in-person stuff, working with
Yeah.
incredible companies like ACV, to name a few. And there's a lot of other ones, but for you to do that, man, you yourself are a success story as a business owner, free of the network, free of anything else, in that you had the ability to pivot, to be malleable, and again, to be courageous enough to then pivot your business from on-prem to strictly virtual now, and coming up with these kits. It's ingenious. And I'd be curious to know who else is doing it, because I don't know anyone else that has a podcast in a suitcase, which is over here to my left. So
Right.
again, acknowledgement and kudos, my friend. Not to make this a
Well,
back massaging
yeah,
fest, but
yeah,
it's true.
right.
It's true, man. Seriously, it's
Right.
so true.
Well, thank you for that. And yeah, I mean, it was, necessity is the mother of invention, right? Like I found myself
Pain too.
with no way to do any of that on-site shooting. Studio was closed. And on top of that, I do a lot of childcare these days. So I don't have, like, even now as things are starting to open up, I have to kind of stay in a similar space here where it's all virtual. But on the plus side, I we just wrapped a big project through Techstars that was based out of Japan. Never could have done
Whoa.
that with the old like setup. We've had guests on our meeting from out of town, Houston, Vancouver, up in to New England and down into Georgia and stuff. Those possibilities were maybe there in some capacity, but they weren't as I wasn't taking advantage of them for one. And I feel like that's the big shift that we're able to somewhat, um, be in line with and help kind of push forward is people who have realized how much more there is out there outside of their geographic area or, um, more access to clients, to uh, you know guests on podcasts, stuff like that. Like there's just so much out there. The world has become smaller, I guess, right? So well, I'll get right into the main kind of I tie in all these podcast episodes now to what we have going on with the vidwheel creator network in this month. it is actually going to be all about generating content ideas. And that was part of the reason I thought you'd be a great guest for this episode, right?
Yes,
You
sir.
are cranking out a ton of content.
Thank
So
you.
I don't know, like what's the process? How do you decide what to put out there? What types of things are you putting out there? You could tell the audience about that and we'll kind of go from there.
Yeah, no, great question. And I know we powwowed before this, before we hit the record button, but the old adage is cash is king. Now it's content is king. It was always not always, but it was content is king for a while. But now it's like king is in caps and bold, in that kind of mantra because of the pandemic, because of the virtual centric world we live in that's dominated by the screen and the video and the camera. And yeah, so for me, it's like, okay, like how there's a couple kind of thoughts that I have or filters that I run through my decision making and creating content, Neil. We start with, is this resonant, relevant? Is it going to speak to my brand and to the brand that I'm putting out to the world? But also things like have a notebook at your bedside. Have a maybe a little notepad in your shower, in your bathroom. I mean, maybe not the shower, but the bathroom. Because when you start to find like what it is you're meant to do on this earth, your mind starts to kind of regenerate the creativity and imagination that we may have lost when we were younger. And so for me, I have these ideas constantly flowing, Neil. And I'm always trying to iterate. I'm taking notes on my phone. I'm doing reminders like we did before this. We started recording. I
Right.
put a reminder in for something with the Video Creator Network, Mighty Networks platform. So yeah, I would just say to folks who are trying to get better with content, the other thing too is start to sample others' content. See what's good at it's Bruce Lee, right? Take what's useful, discard what's not, and uniquely make it your own. So you see other podcasters, you see other people that are putting content, even if it's free of video or podcasting, but something that resonates, that sticks with you. Take mental stock of that, mental note of that, or even write it down. And then that'll help you when you come to a point where, okay, in my business life, in my community life, I want to create content. Well, where do I start? And so having the notepad to be able to track some of those thoughts that come to your mind as you go through life, checking out people's podcasts or their content on different platforms. And then obviously, knowing your brand and your voice and how can you stay congruent with it. Those are some big takeaways.
Yeah, yeah, excellent. Well done. That's a great, tip. They because we
Got
already brought him up earlier, I'm going to bring up Dan Gigante.
it.
I've seen him like, he's got a nice little idea notebook, or at least to used to always have it on him, right? You've got yours. That's an excellent piece of advice, because like the worst possible scenario is you're like, you set up a social media schedule or a video schedule, and you get to the morning of and you're like, now what am I going to talk about, right? Like when you're trying to generate it right then, that's when it can be hardest. And if you have that little idea book, you can go back and be like, oh yeah, that was a good one, right?
If you fail to prepare, you're preparing to fail, right? That's another
Yeah,
adage, another
there you go.
way, as it relates, as it lends itself to content generation, content strategy, content management. It's
um,
it's so powerful. You just never know, Neil. You never know that one little thing. Like you might say to yourself, like, "Oh, this is going to be dumb content," or "This is going to be a dumb." Maybe not dumb, but you might poo-poo it or whatever you want to call it. You might dismiss it's probably the word I was looking for. But you really, and it's happened to me so many times where I just, you know what, I'm going to put that out there. I'm going to comment there and tag that. And then
right.
something can happen out of it. Even if it's just, again, a human, like we talked about, give first, something that helps someone for the inherent good of it being the act of just creating goodness. Right. So yeah, you just never know. So share.
Excellent. And I do want to touch on one other point that you
Mhm.
had when in that last answer, which was kind of built around knowing your voice and kind of having that strategy in place. That is one of the pieces that I think is totally overlooked, right? Like if you know what your company says and what they stand for and what their messaging is, you don't end up in those situations where on to go back to that, oh, I'm supposed to post something now, or I'm supposed to create a video now, what's it going to say? That type of situation just doesn't happen with the same frequency if you're really clear on that messaging and that voice. So that was also a great point by you.
Thank you. And adding one more piece to that, the enemy of all execution is complexity. So if you make
There
things
you go.
harder for me, I mean, again, on air, more candor and accountability or whatever. Candor is the word. There was a point in time, and it wasn't long ago, where I'd have people that would reach out to me, friends, mentors, whoever, just interested individuals, and say like, well, what is it that you do? Or John, when someone asks me about what you're doing, how can I give them like 5 to 10 words or one sentence, right?
Sure.
And so before verbatim, it was, with all these emojis in my headline on LinkedIn: supercharged connector, collaborator, and champion of brands, causes, and humanity. And that's a mouthful. That's a lot.
Right.
Like, what? So over time, again, back to the iterative process, the notepad, the thoughts, the consuming of other content, the conversations that you have. Finally, it stuck with me one day in February. I was out running in the snow like an absolute maniac would, and I had this one thing on this Marcus Elevation Taylor as a motivational guy, and he says about agent of this or that. I was like, wait a minute, agent of transformation. And then
Yeah.
obviously I iterated even further via osmosis, because osmosis is, the gradual bringing together of
Right.
particles, ideas, knowledge. Well, now it's via osmosis. So I'll tell you, man, it's a beautiful process when you step back and look at just evolution of anything, our lives, our online appearance, our mindset. It's cool, man. It's cool.
Well, and it's all tied to being willing to take those next steps, right? We talk about incremental change within the creator network all the time. Like if, and I think we may have even, started with this, or this might have been one of your posts recently. But your first video is not going to be your best one, right? You
No.
ship it and then you kind of improve on it. And it's the same with pretty much every aspect of business, right? You have to be willing to get out there and do some things in order to find out whether it's working, where you can improve, and go from there. So your tagline is a great example of that. You always have to be willing to go and revisit and improve, and that's just the whole growth mindset thing. So
when you're willing to share your story, whether it's literally just the content you're putting out where you're new to it, and hey guys, like, it's my first video, I'm figuring things out, like looking for feedback or whatever it is.
right.
I want to make sure this is very clear to anyone, and I'll even coaching myself on this when I say this statement, and I say it all the time. People think vulnerability, I don't want to generalize, people may think that vulnerability and sharing kind of like your warts or your struggles is actually, weakness, but it's truly the opposite. So when you're willing to share and you are vulnerable, right? That's a big word there. Dr. Brené Brown, she talks about vulnerability. That is where you actually show yourself to be the most courageous, the strongest, because you're sharing your inadequacies nakedly, if you will. And you're saying, this is me, this is what I'm doing. And a lot of times, or not a lot of times, I think hopefully most times, people will recognize that, and they'll give props or credit where credit is due. And then you're going to solicit feedback, and maybe you inspire someone else to share their inadequacies or whatever. And this might be going too inspirational, motivational, but with video at the forefront, if you're putting out video and it's a little off, put a video out and ask for the community to get, what can I do better here? What am I doing wrong? Or how, what do you think is great? Or any insights and tips or tricks will be helpful. So I just want to color that too.
Yeah. And I'll go even one step further on it. It doesn't even have to be other folks, right? You can be evaluating on a lot of that stuff. That used to be, even with our production company, that used to be a goal, is that you would reflect on a video that you made, right? And these were professionally done, but there's always tiny little improvements that you can make on anything, and you have to self-reflect and say, the next video we're going to tweak that one little thing and it's going to be even better, right? And that is I'm trying to think where
Kaizen. Kaizen is a Japanese word that means continuous small improvements every day that over a long period of time will add up to greatness.
They add up. Yeah. So that's a good one. See, we're right in your wheelhouse here with all this.
Oh man,
motivational growth mindset stuff and everything.
People are going to be like, dude, this kid is extra juice. But the fun fact is, I've not had much coffee today. I've been actually weaning off coffee. So people are going to think, man, this dude's out of his mind, too much caffeine. But it's really not. It's just life, man. Breathing in life, and living the dream, literally. So yeah, Neil, you're the man, baby.
So this is off script. This isn't in the notes, but a lot of that seems to be a very common thing that a lot of people have sort of stepped into, maybe during the pandemic, or maybe it's just coincidence. And then the next kind of comment that a lot of those same folks have had is they're drinking the mud water.
Mud water, no. I think that's more like you're thinking like mushroom coffee and
Right.
like
Yeah, that's
the
what it
other.
is. It's like a mushroom coffee thing. But
It's
that's,
funny you say that.
yeah.
Yeah. Go ahead. No, you go ahead. Sorry,
Well,
I'm
it's
talking a
it's
lot.
more of a replacement, right? So, but that's, I don't know, that's come up a lot recently. A lot of people like the mud water. So,
Well,
but
it's
that's
funny you
not
say
you. You're just cutting out caffeine in coffee or something like that. Yeah.
Well, I'm excited. I'm excited to say this out loud because it's more
Okay.
accountability and like what we'll call law of attraction. I've yet to really release this, but I'm on day 2 of veganism. I am working towards abstaining from caffeine, which I've only been a caffeine drinker, maybe through coffee, maybe a year and a half, 2 years at tops.
Okay.
And I just see you talk about that self-examination, right? That
Right.
you're examining yourself daily, even in real time, minute by minute. And I know that caffeine juices me more than I need to be. I'm in hyperdrive. I'm in overdrive.
Right.
And right now it would seem like I did have a lot of coffee, but it's just that I'm excited by this conversation and I cannot help myself. And I used to actually, and I won't name names, but there were people that would say that, John, you got to learn how to channel your energy. You got to be better with it. This world needs energy. This world needs transformation. This world needs positivity, even neutrality. And it needs resilience and passion.
I'm gonna hit you with one question, one last question, because I kind of thought this might happen, John, but we're
Tangential,
over
juicy.
our typical time. So I'm
Just
gonna hit
chalk
you.
it up to the power of osmosis, Neil, baby. Let's go.
Yeah. I'm going to hit you with one more question, which is the question that ties all of these episodes together. I didn't put in our notes what you said last time, so you can repeat if you want, and I won't even know, probably.
Sure, sure.
But what is one thing that you've done to make your business or a client's business smarter?
The first thought that comes to mind, Neil, is whether it's literally through osmosis or through intentional conversation, discussion, coaching, bring an element of humanity and realness to what you're doing. Everyone will say to me, John, what keeps you motivated? What keeps you inspired? And it's those that are on the other side of the question that keep me motivated and inspired, that are curious to know that. Because when you really inject your life with an element of realness and authenticity and candor, and authenticity gets thrown around a lot,
Yeah.
but again, candor and vulnerability and just humanness, humanity, whatever it is, when you can inject that into your life and then of course into the content you're putting out, you're going to magnetize yourself. And that's
Yeah.
something I coach on too. So magnetism, right? So people don't want to see the guy or the gal that is constantly on the mountaintop, constantly out there killing it. And there, it's almost like that really curated content feed,
Right.
which more and more people are talking about, right? It's like, if you're always posting the vacations you're on and whatever, this, that, and the other, that are always so ultra great. I'm not saying you should be, posting about how, crappy things are going, whatever, like all the time, but
Right.
it's that balance, right? Life is all balance. And so if you can balance out the good with the bad, because the bad will, again, it'll magnetize you to where it's like, you want to see that person that is real. They're not
Right.
just talking. They're not a talking head. They're not they're not some, there's nothing worse than, and this is where I kind of finish. There's nothing worse than when, you connect with someone on a social platform, let's call it LinkedIn again. That's where I keep going to. And then you
Sure.
meet them, whether it's virtual now, or if it was in person, and it's like, you're not the same person. Like,
Yes.
not whether it's the picture, right? That's a
Right.
whole nother topic. But if
Right.
it's the picture, but more importantly, right, or more broad strokes, it's like you have this energy, this essence, whether good or bad or whatever it is, online. But then in person, it's totally different.
Yeah.
So that word congruent, or if and I might be making up a word, but the element of congruence and realness
Yeah.
are two of the biggest things I think that will make your business smarter, make you smarter. And then for me, through osmosis, it's making the people I work with and serve, I would like to think smarter, in a sense that they're doing things differently with how they amplify their messaging in their world, their messages to the world.
Right. Yeah, and like, we call it what it is. It's authenticity, right?
Yeah.
Nobody's life is vacation all the time, like, driving fancy cars and stuff like that. authentically, if you have all that stuff, you probably have put in a lot of hard work, or I guess maybe family money or something, but
Hey,
whatever.
old
Uh,
money.
but the authenticity has almost gotten a little bit of a it's become so much of a buzzword that I think people even avoid it at this point. But
Right.
it is truly what we're talking about. Like authentically, it's not all vacations and Lamborghinis. There's a lot of hard work, and
Yeah.
you struggle with that hard work, right? And so to put it out there in a real way, a way that people relate to, is very important. And I think also has been very much amplified by the pandemic because everybody's at home. You'd see the news anchor with the kid that walks through the background, like that kind of stuff is real. That's really happening. And like it used to be sterilized, right? Like you and I did it. You go into that empty studio, you get the sound and the lighting as perfect as possible, and nobody's going to disturb you, and there's less of that. It's more of a window into people's lives, I think, right now, which I don't
Mm,
hate. So
dude, that is
um
so well
yeah.
summarized. And by the way, you have a great voice for video and radio and content. And
Well,
just want to point
yeah,
that out.
thanks. Thank
It's
you.
good, man. It's
I
good radio. It's the Power of Osmosis Video Podcast.
yeah, yeah. The radio voice, right? Yeah, I've been told that, but you know what my biggest problem is? I don't enunciate well enough to like truly be VO or anything like that. So that's my own
Because you're
self-evaluation.
real.
See?
It's because you're, but okay. So your self
Yeah.
evaluation because you're real.
Right, right.
Right? So it's
Yep.
like you're not going to sit there and be like, "Hi, this is Neil Carroll of the Video Creator Network."
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
because you're real and you're self-examined. So there you go.
And I can do the movie announcer voice. Yeah, if I ever want to go that route, I guess, right? But
All
no,
right.
no,
Well,
we're
then
not
let's
going
can
to
we
do it
quit?
now.
Can we
Yeah,
quit? Come on,
no,
you can't say that without doing it. Come
no,
on, give us a little something. All right, I
no,
love
no, 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 no. We're not
it.
going down that path.
We've already spent a lot of
We've
time.
already gone over time. See, that'll be my excuse. I would like to say thank you, John, for being on. I know we tried to get this hooked up for a while,
It's
and
all
I
good.
had to kind of slot you into a good theme with the Creator Network. It's been great to see you grow
Thank
within
you.
the network. It's been great to see your content incrementally improve, like we've talked about. And yeah, thank you for all you've done for the network itself.
Thank you.
And to all the viewers and listeners, thank you for taking the time to sit down with John and I. And if you like some of the content you heard today, if you like this idea of video and business and their marriage, subscribe to this
Click the button.
podcast, video podcast. Yeah, if you're on YouTube, you've got the subscribe below. If you're on your your typical podcast platforms, go ahead and subscribe, and these come out monthly. So
Glad
thank
you
you,
did.
John.
Glad you did. Thank
Excellent.
you.
Have a good one.
Thanks, Neil. Thanks, everyone.